Going on, everybody? Happy Monday to you. Bringing you health, happiness, and everything in between. I'm your host, Vernon Brown, and we are just going to be talking about something really cool this weekend. Um, Pardon me if you notice my voice sounds a bit more baritone. We had a really great weekend. We went back Tennessee, which is one of my really cool spots I love being at. And this weekend was just really cool, just being in a room with entrepreneurs. And by the way, I hope you had a really great weekend. And when it was come to, putting yourself out there, this whole topic and what I'm going to be talking about is communication. And communication is one of those things where we think about email, text, phone, email and texting, right? But I'm talking about real communication. I'm talking about the things a lot of people aren't going to talk about because, when everything was kind of, shut down for a little bit for good reason, or bad reason, however you want to view it, but we were shut down. And a lot of us, interpersonally, we weren't working on things as much because it's really different, in our, new age of communication. Communication looks really different when you're doing this versus when you're doing this and talking. And so this weekend, I was doing this, I did a closing keynote and a workshop. It's kind of this really great event, a great group of guys, put, an amazing group together of entrepreneurs who are just hungry, who are just ready for it. But one thing that I noticed immediately, I'm just doing my thing. I walk into the room and I'm talking, and it's the first time ever that I was able to bring my son with me to speak. I was super excited. And me and my son, we're going back and forth, we're laughing and joking. But I noticed a lot of the entrepreneurs over there, a lot of the attendees, they were just kind of siloed off and weren't talking. So I said, oh, I got this. So when I was, let me just go ahead and kind of stir the pot. It's awkward at first, right? This is when you go to like parties, cocktail parties, or when you go to events, it's just kind of awkward, right? It's like being at that middle school dance. And when I went in and started talking with people, I just started just doing my thing. I'm just listening to what people are talking about, seeing where they're stuck. And as I'm mingling, this is a brief, it wasn't, thousands of people, but it was the right size, if you know what I mean. But I noticed when I'm talking with people, I think most importantly, get to the point, is people had issues or circumstances that 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, or an hour later, and these were all attendees, and this person would have a solution to it. And it just cracked me up. And, I flipped it around. I do this really cool exercise where I make people talk to each other about some things that they're working on in a positive way. And people just like loved it. And while I was talking about putting yourself out there today, getting to the point of it is so many times when we're out in this world and so many times we're trying to grow a business or just trying to grow ourselves and become more, we forget the human element, right? Because we're so busy worried about the best email, or we're so busy worried about, did I put that best emoji? But some of the best things that transform the way that you do business, the way that you live your life, the way that you engage in relationships happens face to face. And people get so uncomfortable with putting themselves out there. So I'm going to be giving some different tips with some kind of real world representations of things. So the first tip I want to talk about, communicating, putting yourself out there, really letting people know who you are, because relationships are rocket ships. I say that in so many ways, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, but relationships are everything. Nothing happens outside of a conversation. That was a couple weeks ago where I talked about conflict versus conversation. But we need one another. We need to talk. You don't need everybody to agree with you. You don't need some people who just, like how I used to be, is like to be an introvert and never talk. These things are not what we're designed to do. This isn't an ideology, but we're social creatures. We got to learn how to socialize, but people are falling back from that. And it's, many reasons, but one thing I'm going to talk about, and then I'm going to give a tip to kind of battle that, is we think that we need to be perfect, right? And I get that. Believe me, we think that we have to put out this representation of ourselves, which it's flawless, that it doesn't stutter or stammer, that it always speaks perfectly. That we have to be the most interesting person in the room, that we have to make sure that we always look a certain way, that we always have to make sure that just these things, right? And that's not communication. Communication is like the story maybe about why your clothes might be disheveled, like, right? Like that's something that's a strength, but not a weakness. Because if you approach a conversation and say, oh my God, I look like crap, or, I don't look my best, or, I've been traveling for hours or 16 hours to get here. That's what you lean in with, right? Versus saying that I can't talk because that's what's wrong with me. And I know in society, I know that we have these representations of when people get on these lives or people do anything online, it's always perfect. And if they are not perfect, that means you have nothing to talk about. No, I'm here to tell you When you want to start practice putting yourself out there and you're trying to figure out where do you start from, start with the problem that you might perceive, or start what I call it with going with the resistance in my practice. The thing that makes it awkward is the thing that you can use to your advantage. Let's just say, and I saw this, live, where you didn't feel like you were your best, or you just felt like you didn't get enough sleep. Use it to your advantage. Say, hey, I know what you might be thinking. I look like a mess, but that's what happens when you travel for 18 hours when you're coming from Singapore. Boom, immediately. Now people are like, Singapore, wow, really? Or let's just say maybe you have a stain on your shirt and you just feel so silly. Like, hey, I know what you're probably thinking. I probably eat like a 7-year-old, and you'll probably say 7 because I have a child. But where you can start using the things that make you feel as if you can't talk about it, you don't want to talk about it, as kind of a point to let people know that, hey, guess what? I'm a human being and I make mistakes. Being perfect doesn't do anything for anybody. And by the way, and I've talked to lots of you all about this, I know a couple people watching right now, when you put yourself out there, we're all thinking the same exact thing, aka when you talk to someone new, or if you're doing something that makes you uncomfortable, that might, typically kind of make you retreat because you feel as though, hey, I'm not quite sure what to say. But I'm telling you, you always know what to say. You always do. The problem is the point that you need to talk about. Oh, I feel nervous. I'm not quite sure what to say. Say that. Hey, the hardest thing about doing events like this is you never quite know what to say. So what I did is I figured I would find one person and say that to them, and we would just take it from there. People appreciate stuff like that because we all feel it. Everybody feels it. I felt it. It comes in varying degrees, not as much anymore because I'm constantly practicing. I still get nervous. I still like, oh man, I hope I don't fumble on myself. The only difference between me and how you might interact is I kind of lean into that. It's like, I'm not quite sure what to say. Good. Tell people that you like suspense. Let me give you an example. This weekend, when I was talking with someone, I wasn't quite sure what to say, so I walked up to her. And, this lady, I can just tell she is a great presenter. Her and I, Megan, we were just like kicking it. But I wasn't quite sure what to say to her. And I said, hey, I don't know what's about to happen, but I know I need to talk to you. And then we, boom, hit it off right there. And she busted out laughing. People appreciate the fact that you're leaning into your humanity. People understand that completely. We all know what it's like. We all been beginners. We all have had low energy. We all haven't had our coffee one day. Use it to your advantage. It's not a reason to play small. It's a reason to stand tall. For some of you all who might be in the dating world, you got to be bold. He, she, they're not going to come up to you if you don't initiate it. And what does it say about a person who initiates the conversation? When it comes to, initiating communication, I really want to talk about, this kind of perfectionism. I don't even want to say perfectionism, but having an ideal, I think, is a better way, because perfectionism just comes across as negative to me. Having ideals are great. But remember, between reality and ideal is between what's not going to happen and the ideal is reality in between all of this. The reality of it is that you want to talk to people. It's important for you to talk to people. If you don't talk to people, your thoughts can get a little bizarre. Isolation is the enemy. Believe me. Because when energy gets low, we tend, again, to retreat. It's kind of built into us. So kind of wrapping this up, bringing it together, I'll make this a couple bullet points. Being perfect is something that we all worry. Being an ideal is something that we all universally can agree we all worry about in some way, shape, or form. Some of you might not. Majority of you do. I've talked to lots of people over these last few years, and I'm telling you, it's something that we do. And I think the movie, what was it? The Avengers Endgame. That's exactly, it was one of the best lines that I've ever heard. Nerd talk coming up. It's when Thor's mom said, you will always fail at being who you want to be, but you will always succeed in being who you are. Be you. I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think I was enough, just like so many other people. And I talk about these things. Why? Because I'm human. And by me saying things like that, it's just to say, guess what? I'm a human just like everyone else. I think about it. Being a not enough is something that we all universally can, agree with and understand. But be who you are. Nobody wants you to be perfect. They just want to feel like they can connect with you. Like, man, this guy might talk really fast. This guy's really goofy. Or this lady, doesn't want to look me in the eye because it's really intense for her. Or, just everything. But use it to your advantage. It's there. Second bullet point. If you don't know what to say, use that. That's what you say. I'm not quite sure what to say here. And I just used that example, what I did about 28 hours ago. I'm not quite sure what to say, But something said that I needed to come talk to you. Body language does apply. If you are looking really intense and saying something like that, you're going to get the police called on you. So use some common sense. But look at it as if you're walking up and you're learning something new. And you're just making a great eye contact, not too hard, because then if you start looking at people like this, even if I do it on the camera, it gets a little weird. But just look at people. Say, I'm not quite sure what to say. So what's up? Let's do this. It works, by the way. Um, but yeah, communicate. Don't box yourself in. Being perfect is something that none of us will ever be good at or ever, because what's perfect for you or maybe perfect for that conversation won't be perfect universally for all conversations. Be a human being. That's all I'm getting at today. Be human. Don't hold back and put yourself out there. So many times there is, and the point that I was starting with today, that we when we box ourselves in and we're not talking, we limit on how many options we can have and opportunities and possibilities. The same person who's looking for, oh my gosh, I need an editor. I had someone come up, no joke, about 30 minutes later, 30 minutes to an hour later, and they were an editor for 30 plus years, and they just love doing that work to help people. A conversation. I talked to two different people who were in the space of looking for a partner, and they were just trying to meet somebody, and they really love salsa dancing. And I'd be damned if I didn't see a few hours later, someone who loves the salsa dance, and they just got out of something. Like, even if it's not something romantic, but it's just like, wow, we got common interest. We are more alike than anything. I don't care where you're from. I've done this exercise in so many different countries and so many different types of people. It always comes up. We got things in common, but you got to talk. Don't be afraid. And the worst thing that can happen is what? They'll say, well, wow, that's a very interesting perspective. Or guess what? Move on to something else. Some people are just odd in themselves, but it's not you. Don't let their stuff be your stuff. Go out there, be healthy, happy, and everything in between today, but start putting yourself out there. We're giving you tips every day to make it even easier. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.